If you look at that income statement and you are just looking at the actual bottom number, what came out at the end, and you have an opinion about it, maybe you make decisions from it, you're putting yourself in a very dangerous spot. Welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your private medical practice systems into vitals, give you tools to diagnose root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Zed Williamson, and I believe that everything you experience, everything I experience, is the perfect outcome of our current systems. And if we want to experience something differently, then we need to take responsibility and tweak the system. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume that you're experiencing some level of constraint within your private medical practice. And when I think about constraint, I think about barriers to achieving your goals, things that are in your way. This can kind of rear its ugly head as the same problems popping up over and over again. It's maybe difficulty hiring and keeping good employees. Maybe it's not knowing where to invest your time or money to grow the practice. If any of these things ring true, visit physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and check your vitals. It'll help you identify maybe where to start in regards to tweaking your system. Now, one of those items that I mentioned, how do you spend your resources? Resources being money and time. This is a tough one, and I want to paint a picture for you. Imagine if you did a test on a patient where you actually got information, let's say it's blood work or a scan or anything at all, where you are trying to identify the current state of a patient. Makes total sense that you would do that, right? What if that test was calibrated wrong? How valuable is it? Not very, especially if you don't know how off that calibration is. It would seem silly for you to make decisions on how to treat a patient if you knew that the test that you're using wasn't calibrated correctly. I mean, imagine if you had a compass and you knew you had to go west, and you knew that the compass wasn't correct, but you didn't know in what direction. Would you trust the compass? Of course not. I know these sound silly. Where are you going with this, Zed? Well, the thing is, this is happening right now in your business with your finances. And when I mean finances, I mean the actual documents that you likely get from an accountant. Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's only once a year. It's your income statement. Your income statement for your business that tells you how much total revenue came in and then what all your expenses were. And here is a really dangerous scenario. If you look at that income statement and you are just looking at the actual bottom number, what came out at the end, and you have an opinion about it, maybe you make decisions from it, you're putting yourself in a very dangerous spot. And so there's a really simple tweak to something like your income statement, and I suggest that you sit down with whoever's doing your bookkeeping or accounting to make this simple change. And I know that 99% of the people listening right now, it's not set up this way. We've done enough work with enough practices across the country, across specialties, to know that generally it's not set up correctly. You need to look at income by service type, and you need to look at cost related to those services, and then expenses. So what's the difference? Okay, so income, total revenue coming in. Let's say you have a practice and you have you're the sole physician, maybe you're a surgeon, and you have a nurse practitioner, okay? You need to understand what revenue came into the practice because of you and your nurse practitioner. If you're in a specialty like ear, nose, and throat, where you might have a lot of different lines of revenue, like hearing aids, in-office procedures, allergy, the income from those three things need to be separate. You need to understand, what does it represent from a total revenue at the top for the practice. The next step is you need to understand what the cost to do that business was. So in a one physician with a nurse practitioner practice, you need to understand your cost as a physician and your nurse practitioner's cost. And that should be considered cost of goods sold. I know you're a person doing work, but your cost of goods sold, because your existence is what allows you to treat those patients. In the ear, nose, and throat example I gave, you need to understand what the costs of the materials are. The allergy tests, if you're using devices for in-office procedures, or the cost of the hearing aids. And then also anyone related from a provider standpoint to seeing those patients. All of that is cost of goods sold. This is such a big deal because when the practice is thinking about growth and where growth should be, if we don't do what I just laid out, then you can look at one number at the top and one number at the bottom, and it just looks like you should go, you know what, we should open another location and we should hire another surgeon because look, this is going to be easy. And then you go down that path and it doesn't go well. When you understand it's referred to as revenue, cost of goods sold, and then gross profit, that's the money after cost of goods sold, and then expenses, that's things like rent, what you pay your administrator, office staff, insurance, all the stuff that happens no matter what every single month that's not related to a provider treating a patient. And then you have net profit. You make much better decisions. That is a calibrated test. Just like you would not treat a patient, you would not prescribe them something if you knew that the test you used was not calibrated correctly. It's really dangerous to make major business decisions if all you have to look at is an income statement with total revenue and net profit or net income at the bottom. We have a lot of webinars on our website around this. Finances is one of those things where the industry, unfortunately, tries to make it feel confusing. The fact that you're a physician means you have learned much more difficult things than this. And sometimes our brain wants to let us off the hook. So our brain will tell us, I'm not good at that, or I don't really know how to look at that. It's actually very simple. There's just a few items to take a look at. I beg you, learn this stuff. Use other podcasts, use webinars. This is something that when you wrap your head around it, it has such a big impact on the success of your business. And I believe you really need to take control of the health of the business side of your practice. It's what's going to be able to keep you independent. It's going to keep you in the driver's seat so you never are in that I have to position as a business owner. So visit physiciangrowthaccelerator.com. You can see some webinars there. Always feel free to reach out with questions. And with that, we'll see you next time on the Physician Growth Accelerator.